Yeah, and with that, we'll hand it over to our elected. I'm not sure who wanted to speak first, and but we'll hand it over.
I'd like to go ahead and kick it off, and trust me, this presentation you're going to see has not been rehearsed. So
Perfect.
is that okay? Casey, Andrea, can I go ahead and just kick it off?
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And I'm as the oldest senior legislator, I want to take that opportunity. Anyway, first of all, thank you all for what you're doing to help East Portland and being part of this committee. I think it's just invaluable work, and the EPAP overall, but particularly economic development. Reason I wanted to start, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this session because it is so unique, and then I'll just get into the 3 ARPA investments that I made. But I think it was, we walked into the session not expecting good economic situation, for one thing. We didn't get started in the capital.
Jeff, you're not coming through.
Because normally a lot happens just in a process of walking down the hall, maybe going to a hearing, and somebody will grab you. You'll have that 30-second, 1-minute conversation, but a lot of communication takes place that way, and none of that happened. And I think one of the other things that was kind of sad for me, and I think we missed out, is how little time. I mean, I finally got to see Andrea in person, but I don't think, Senator, did we ever see each other actually in person during the session? I don't think so. Whereas normally I'd be cruising down to the other end of the building, trying to get in touch, talk about different issues that are going on. So one of the bright spots, though, kind of funny in a way, is we did not have folks by and large outside chanting and driving their log trucks around the building and doing a lot of things that have been kind of a little bit disruptive over the last session or so. So I hope that kind of captures the really a challenging environment to get that job done, because it is hard when you can't have that face-to-face conversation with people. You can't be in a meeting where you can really read the room and see how people feel about things. I mean, maybe we're getting a little bit better. I'm feeling pretty comfy with you guys tonight, but it's just harder, and you have to schedule absolutely everything you do. So I found that was really hard. The bright spot, of course, is we ended up getting a lot of federal dollars. Our revenue forecast was much greater than anybody had anticipated, and it's not always been that way. So, and I'm a co-chair of Natural Resources Subcommittee for Ways and Means, and we fight tooth and nail for everything that we need. And I've never been in a situation, excuse me, where we actually could get the funding that I wanted for major programs and start rebuilding some of the agencies that have been in recovery since the 2008 timeframe. So a lot of the happiness that we're experiencing right now, I've certainly never seen it like that. One of the bright spots that I wanted to mention, of course, for East Portland, and I think my co-conspirators here will do a better job of talking more about it, but getting funding for 82nd Avenue to start work on that. I mean, my gosh, that's been a dream for I don't even know how long, and it's going to be such a breakthrough. As far as my ARPA investments, I joined with others to get funding for Mount Hood Community College. I've always been an advocate for education, and Mount Hood has an awful time trying to raise funding, and so I put in $300,000 for that. Just a lasting. I'm looking for investments that would have a lasting impact for people in our community and help with their education. So it's kind of my main thing. The other area is Zenker Farms does an amazing job for our community at all levels, whether it's, excuse me, surveying every fifth grader in David Douglas, and I think some other school districts now, getting their farm connection to the farm programs. They have the community gardens. They used to have an egg co-op because I belonged to that, but they um, they have a lot of education for people that are trying to start up their own businesses. So they have what do you call it, community commercial, I'm sorry, commercial kitchen that's available for people to come in. So just a wide range of education, and they're getting food, good, healthy food out to the community in the form of the CCAs. So I really, really like the work they're doing over there. I put the majority of my about $1.5 million into something that I think is going to have a long-lasting impact on our community, and this Leech Botanical Garden. They've just finished phase 1 of their redevelopment, and if you haven't been over there, you really need to go take a look at this aerial walkway. It's just amazing, and it's going to be attracting more people. But in talking to them, um, we got to looking at the Manor House. If you're familiar with that, that was John and Lila Leech's original home on Johnson Creek. Well, it's kind of dilapidated after 70 or 80 years and needs a lot of repair. And so I wanted to put money into that and make sure that that building is a lasting legacy. They're looking at a huge increase in number of visitors. And this is a building that's used for weddings, for special activities. And so it really does serve the community as well. So I don't know how else they would have ever gotten it. That's actually a public, Portland Public Park facility. And they just don't put a lot of money into things like that. So it was just this crazy, wonderful opportunity to help there. I wasn't able to meet all of their needs, but hopefully that'll be a good kickoff for some of the work that needs to be done. So we're talking, roof, windows, just heating systems, things like that. That'll really add some life back to that building. But I think it's important in our community. So I can probably stop there. I do want to point out one thing, just crazy. You may know this, but I actually worked with 2 David Douglas board people. Frida and I were on the school board together, and of course, Frida's still on that board, and I'm on there working now with Andrea. So it's kind of neat community. It's kind of nice to be a part of all of this. So anyway, I can stop there and turn it over to one of my colleagues.
Andrea, you want to go next since you have a time?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, Senator. Well, hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for giving us the time. Feel free to share questions in the chat or just unmute or raise your hand. I particularly appreciate this conversation because I think you're right, Katie. We often hear a lot about investments that are made statewide. And I think in East Portland, unfortunately, we get overlooked, right? And we're used to not having the pertinent information for our districts here, or at least outer East Portland. So I am happy to share a little bit about the 3 ARPA requests that I'm very excited to have funded for House District 47. Each House representative received $2 million, while each senator received $4 million in resources for investments for use of the American Rescue Plan dollars. And so we did some coordination with the leadership of Senator Jama and along with Representative Reardon to really focus in on what were the real needs that we were hearing and how can we best utilize all of our resources as efficiently as possible. And so unfortunately, I don't have a presentation, but what I can do is just show this document that I have up and maybe walk through. I think Kian might have really similar materials as well. But just for sake of visual, I don't know if it's okay. Yes, it looks like I have access to share my screen. So give me just 1 minute. I'm going to share my screen and I will, can you all see this document that I have? Okay. So I am happy to go through a little bit. Again, we had 2 million to be able to invest. And I first just want to say that we had a lot of really compelling requests. There was certainly much more need than I could fund with 2 million. And so I want to encourage folks to continue to engage with my office. I think there's some incredible programming and leadership happening. And these are really tough choices that ultimately we had to make in the time that we had. And so this map, I don't know exactly the name, but Kian might know the name of the individual who put this incredible infographic together, which really identifies geographically where the investments ended up going, in addition to which programs or organizations they went to. So I'm going to talk about my 3 specifically, and then I'll go back up onto the map, and then I'll talk just a little bit also about the general revenue forecast in general, and how there were kind of some gaps in some of the information and where you might be able to find some more specifics on BIPOC, caregivers, mothers, etc. So with the 2 million, the largest pool that I funded was to the Rosewood Equitable Neighborhood Development at 1.15 million. This was for the opportunity of local ownership, right? We all know the impact that Rosewood has had, not only in the Rosewood community, but really in East Portland, and I would say really in Portland in general. And so I loved the visioning and the community work that's going into an equitable development strategy to not only acquire the property, but really re-envision that entire lot after ownership to provide additional services or additional needs and housing as well. So that was something that I'm very excited. I know that they're partnering, I think perhaps with Human Solutions on working on that property acquisition and really building out that vision, which was very exciting to me. And then we have the East Portland Community Prosperity Project. This was a joint project between Unite Oregon and Mercy Corps to provide wraparound small business development, education, and services. It was so important to me from the get-go. I heard loud and clear, I think it's telling in this meeting too, that COVID recovery had to be centralized in economic recovery. And we weren't just talking about mothers, we were talking about business owners, we were talking about a great school to business pipeline or career pipeline. And so I was really, really excited to see this investment, which was focusing on local immigrant and refugee, either existing businesses or folks who wanted to start a business and figure out, you know, what does that really mean in COVID? And so very excited about that training and micro low interest loan opportunity as well, and just lots of great opportunities with that project. And then the last one I'm really excited about, although the Apano office isn't technically located in House District 47, this property acquisition fund would be the first of its kind as the first API specific property acquisition fund that would also potentially identify sites within House District 47 to provide culturally specific housing mixed with mixed use potentially in the district. And so we provided 350 from our pot, although I know the property acquisition fund from Apano as a whole received much more than that. So we're very excited to have supported that effort and really provide the seed funding to something that I think is going to be very beneficial, not only to the API community, but again, to all of our communities. So I will stop sharing really quickly there, and then I will just start throwing maybe a few things in the chat. So as Representative Reardon shared, we were very surprised when the revenue forecast came out to learn that we had over $1 billion in additional revenue that we didn't know about. And so I can put in the chat here what the presentation was from LRO, or the revenue forecast staff. Oh, thanks, Ian. And basically it just talks about what does that mean, right? Where did the resources come from? What we can expect in terms of the kicker, either the corporate kicker as well as the individual kicker. So I think there's more conversations there in terms of what does equitable distribution look like, and that'll be something that I'm going to be interested in working on for the next session. But one of the things that I found really striking, and if you all aren't signed up to my newsletter yet, please go ahead and sign up. I'll put the link in the chat, was that there was a lot of data missing on mothers leaving the workforce, women leaving the workforce, caregivers. And we heard a lot about the impacts to immigrant refugee communities as well. But what this link is that I just put in the chat didn't really provide a lot of that information. And so I partnered with Fair Shot Oregon to request an additional specific briefing on parent and racial and ethnic disparities based on the numbers, right? Because what we heard is, yes, we have all this revenue, everyone is doing well, right? And the reality actually was, it's not everyone. Let's disaggregate the data. Let's be clear about where and who we're talking about. And so in the chat, I just put the link to the additional briefing that I had requested. It includes all of the additional disaggregated information on BIPOC communities, as well as women in the workforce and wage information. And then the last thing that I'll share is that I'll put 2 more links, the link to my newsletter, which includes the video of that briefing. If you're interested, I would highly recommend. It was really informative. That just kind of walks through this presentation. And then just my newsletter in general would really encourage you all to sign up if you haven't already. And it has a little bit more information on that. I think, you know, as a mom, as a working mom, this information is so important to me. And I will continue to prioritize economic justice in my agenda, and making sure that we're providing economic justice, right, for our communities, predominantly as we look at kicker reform, or even student debt crisis is something I continue to hear, as well as essential workers who we know were really on the front lines through the entire pandemic and weren't compensated in the way that I think that they should have been. So keep an eye out for more legislation on those areas for me, on that economic justice portfolio. And I think that's all I got.
Thank you. Yeah, this is the kind of thing I was hoping to hear. Yeah, thanks. I think you told us this before, just a few days ago at the regular meeting, but it was like with everything, and it's kind of nice to have it all kind of pulled together. Thank you.
Yeah, and I apologize. I was talking very quickly then. So thank you for the opportunity to go slower today.
No, don't apologize. You did great.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off again for the portion of our presentation, but also let you know that I'm also sharing this space with our Chief of Staff, Kian, who have really led the efforts, particularly around ARPA dollars and how we are spending. But before I ask Kian to share with us what my office is spending, but I want to say a couple of things. I think one of the most takeaway point this conversation today you will see is that both Representative Reed and myself and Representative Valderrama, we are our best as we can. We're trying to work together as a team. And so really we're creating that synergy of team. We collaborated ARPA dollars in a ways that we haven't collaborated with the other offices, because our goal was that we're going to create that synergy space where District 24 is really working together. And I think there's expectations all of you shared when I was running for this position, told me that we need to work together. So I think that's one of the synergy that I want to share with you, that this is an effort that all of us work together to ensure the projects that are in front of you today, that you heard from it and you will hear more about it, is a joint effort for all our 3 offices. So I want to just put that out of the first. Secondly, EPAP and I go a long way before when I was a United Executive Director, and worked with EPAP in many ways and collaborated in terms of the variety of issues, both immigrant refugee rights issues as well as economic justice issues. So I'm just grateful that I'm again joining with you all again today to kind of a little bit give you an update about our ARPA dollars and how we spend. The other things that I want to share with you, as the first-time senator, I mean, literally, as probably most of you know, that I was appointed in January 6th, and I was sworn January 11th, and the 19th was kind of our first initial meetings. So literally, I was just put on the fire immediately, trying to dive in some of the challenges that I know that our state is facing, but also overall East Portland is also facing as I represent you all in the Senate. With that said, there's a couple of things that I want to highlight is that this was, of course, as Jeff said, it was unlike any other session we have seen. It. I personally didn't have the opportunity to meet with people one-on-one and get to know them individually, as Jeff was describing. But more importantly, we're still able to do a lot of good work. And then in terms of the East Portland, Andrea is absolutely right. The data is real key. How do we disaggregate data to ensure that we get a full picture of what's going on in our East Portland and in our community? So she's absolutely on the right track, asking those questions about, well, yeah, the state is doing well overall, but how do we disaggregate data and show East Portland how are we faring economic, opportunity that is existing in our state? I think you all heard about people saying that if you live in east of 82nd, you are living in one of the poorest districts in the country. If you live west of East 82nd, you live in one of the wealthiest districts in the country. So there's a real divide in our state and in our city of Portland, particularly, who is actually doing well and who is not doing well. That's not a surprise there. We all know that. We have studied and researched all of that. So I went to that lens to the building when I went to the Salem, and truly try to make sure that I work as hard as I can to ensure that we get the best we can out of this session. Having said that, also, I want to also let you know that the project that my office decided to fund, we used both racial justice lens, economic lens, and also knowing that some of the communities that we work with is not geographically based. So although they might be organizations outside of the district, they still work with people who are in our district. So we use multiple lenses to ensure that we have equitable way of distributing the resources, the $4 million we received our office. And finally, I'm going to say also that we know that as a District 24, we also represent both East Portland and also North Clackamas County. So we have to think about that also. How do we also make sure that the North Clackamas County and East Portland also share resources as well? So those are another lens that we used in our analysis of trying to decide what we're going to fund. With that said, let's Kian walk through you in terms of our own ways of how we spend our $4 million. But I also want to think about more than that. I want you all to think about there's a lot of projects, both housing, economic development, that has been bills that has been passed that has a funding attached to it. And I think we need to dive in and make sure that each and every one of them, we track it, how it's impacting our district. And that's really crucial. That's the most important piece I want to share with you tonight, that there is actually, for example, the housing, we spent $700 million in housing portfolio. We need to understand how that $700 million is impacting our District 24 in East Portland. That's another way that we can also ensure there's equity. With that said, Kian, take away, please.
Yep, thank you so much, Senator Jama, for giving that frame of the projects that I'm going to talk about. So I will just share my screen quickly and just go over them one-on-one. And please let me know or let us know if you have any question. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so the first project that we fund, I go by like alphabetical. So the first one through the African Youth and Community Organization Dream Center. So it's a $290,000. The African Youth and Community Organization, they have been like working for the past 11 years to support more than 20,000 each African immigrant and refugees through different activity like workshops, civic engagement, athletic youth mentorship, and many things like that. So this is the first center that they are trying to get construction money to just like work on poverty acquisition. So this money will just simply go toward helping them building that community and office spaces. And I think this will also be a really opportunity. And we also talk to them and ensure that the construction jobs will go back to like the East Portland or the people in our community. The second project is the Apano Poverty Acquisition Fund, $300,000. I think Rev Valorama already talked a little bit about this project earlier. So this is a share, like a pool of money that Apano tried to get money from different resources. So we just pooled $300,000 toward that project. And I think this property will help stabilize the AAPI community by developing affordable housing and just affordable commercial spaces, which also just go back to help our community.
Ken,
Yes.
is that in addition to the monies that we heard from Representative Valderrama?
Yes.
So that's in addition, yeah.
Yes, and
while I've interrupted, I might as well ask the other question I was going to ask, which is the African Youth Dream Center. Is that going to be built in East Portland?
No, the building physically is not located in East Portland, but I believe that they, like the community they serve, a lot of them actually come from East Portland and in our community. So that's the reason why we decided to fund this project.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I believe that the Apano campaign is about $4 million. So they try to just get, I think they got some money from Representative Pham as well, and just try to keep fundraising. Yep. So the third one is the Glaucoma County Business Recovery Center and $350,000. So this one will just go directly to help small businesses to just recovery from the pandemic through grant and just different type of assistance and tuition for them to have like the leadership development and all of that. And of course, even though like the money go through Glaucoma County, all the people that gonna have to apply and receive the money has to be located in East Portland by zip code. The third one is the Glaucoma Service Center Food Hub. So this one I think is about it's about 10,000 square foot warehouse where they will just provide like food and then storage and packaging and just for like anyone in Multnomah County, and it's County Lily, it's open to everyone. So it just go toward building that food hub space. The next one, we fund the Coalition of Community Color, the gun violence prevention infrastructure, $250,000. So this project is cost the CCC about $2 million. So they have to they're trying to get the rest of that from the county and the sea level. And it's basically just to build a regional community safety through a cultural specific lens to address gun violence in our district. And I think like this money will specifically go towards staffing in this infrastructure. The next one is the Portland Business Alliance Black Economic Prosperity, $100,000. And I think this initiative from the PBA, it's cost them about $1 million. So they got some additional money from Representative Bynum, Senator Frederick, and Representative Rob Knowles. So I think a few key points of this project. The first one is through data analytics, so that they would track like how the Black businesses and how doing in the next 10 years. And then from that data, they will identify some solution to, like some specific solution to help them improve like economic justice and all of that. So I think additionally, through this project, they will also try to create a center for Black economic advancement. It just go to like a space to just like bring all of these resources and data together. So this is the first initiative that they are trying to work on. So these are like all the info we have so far. The next one is the Robust Initiative Building, which Representative Barama also talked about already. So I think I will not go over a lot of this, but I think like many of you probably not like very familiar with Robust Initiative and the work that they're doing to serve our community. So I think like the land that Rosewood is sitting on right now, they hope to build a community space where, you know, it's a mix of commercial, residential, open space and community space for all of our community in East Portland. The next one, we give the money to the Seeding Justice, which I think formerly MRG Foundation, to create a small business development grant. You see right here is $1 million, $120,000, but the total amount is actually $1 million. $120,000 is the cost of the staffing and processing all the money with this grant and also with all of our projects in general. So this grant, they still in the development process, but any businesses from our district will be able to apply to help them again recovery from the pandemic. So I think if you remember, we have this grant and we have the grant we give to the Glaucoma County. So both are very similar. And the people in our district most likely will be able to apply to both of them because they kind of similar, but they are separate grants. So these are the grants related to small business development that businesses can apply for. The next one is the Sunflower Village capital construction. This $600,000 will be given to Hacienda. So they will use this money to buy 2 lands in the Mill Park neighborhood just to develop rental housing and affordable housing for people in our district. With this project, Hacienda will develop, own, and manage all the service and the property. And with these 2 lands, they will be able to develop up to 65 units of affordable housing for this project. The next one is through for the Reimagine Oregon projects, $100,000. I don't know how familiar you are with the Reimagine Oregon project, but this is a newly recreated project, bringing all the Black leaders together just to strategize and work on policy change. So this money will just help them with the staffing to do like trainings. And I think when we give them this money specifically, the condition is that like they will develop a leader or like the people like focusing on in our district only. So this the money just simply go toward that staffing. And the last project is the youth participatory budgeting for COVID relief and recovery, $340,000. And this one is also a pool money. So I think this project, they asked for $1 million and they got $670,000 total from us, Senator Gorsuch, and Representative Ruiz. So they're trying to raise the rest through the city of Portland and the county. The participatory budgeting process, I think, to explain it in a simple way, is just basically give the money back to the community and let them decide how to spend that money. So basically, we don't know exactly what projects will be funded yet, but this money will be decided by youth in our district and Senator Gorsuch district to see how they would like to spend this money together. I know it's really hard to explain all of that complicated process, which I can send more information if you want to. But the outcomes of this project is the health services, housing and homelessness services, public art, recreation and cultural program, and some other potential that may be coming up during the brainstorming session. So I think these are all the 11 projects that we funded. I think this graphics Representative Barama or shared earlier, which include 11 projects from us and also projects from Representative Bruden and Barama to give you all the whole picture of how it's physically look like, even though we have some projects that not physical. So I think I will just leave it here if you have any question. But regarding the next step, the Oregon Treasury Department is trying to do the final check with the federal Treasury Department in the next week to making sure that all of these projects match with the federal guideline. And then after that, it will take up until the end of October for this money to actually get into the organization hands. So I think all of the projects that we fund, they will not have this money until at the end of October. So I think that's all. If you have any question, please just let us know.
Yeah, I'm sure there are some questions. Do we have any in chat that we need to?
I think Frida has a question.
Okay, go for it, Frida.
Actually, I'm a question about the Hacienda project in Mill Park. Do you know, did they specify where in Mill Park they're looking at for multifamily? It limits where you can build that many multifamily units.
I have the exact address. So just give me like 1 minute to get that, but we have the address of where exactly that's gonna be located.
Okay, you can put it in the chat. The other question is, I'm not sure where they're getting their other funding to build this, but our housing committee has gotten a commitment from Portland's Housing Bureau that any of multifamily that they fund, the group that's doing the construction has to reach out to the homeless liaisons in whatever school district it's in to try to give those people first opportunity to get into some of this housing. Because we have a real focus that if it's built in here, East Portland, we want people who are living in East Portland get first opportunity. That we're still working on other ways to kind of push this in. The developers have been really good about reaching out. They actually even, well, in case of Mill Park, if it's in the Mill Park School District, they would be talking with the Mill Park School to see what's needed and how can they tailor this project to best fit the needs in that area. So I wasn't sure if this project, where their funding's coming, if they can be encouraged to do something similar, because that is a very high Latino dominated area.
I think, Frida, you're absolutely right. I think, and I really appreciate that, because I think we can talk to the Hacienda folks and just ensuring that, see if they are willing to agree with us in terms of your analysis around to ensure that the schools that are nearby, families who live or who are their children are attending that area will be able to access the first for those housing. And I think, honestly, I really appreciate your dedication for housing. But as I said earlier, also, there is a quite significant amount of projects that have been passed by this session, as you know it, and been tracking. And I think we should figure it out as one way to figure out how are we faring in terms of where those projects, whether it's the Hacienda or whether it's Habitat for Humanity or whether it's just the home ownership programs in our district. How are we ensuring that our district have access to those resources? And my office is happy to work with you all to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, our committee has encouraged the city, not that it's happened, but that bond funds, we have 26% of the population. They should be spending 26% of those bond funds in the area. Not that they've done it, but we've slowly been able to encourage, and with a lot of the providers like CDC, Human Solutions, Rose, it's almost becoming natural to work with the school districts or the school that they're building their project. And they're also finding it's a benefit for them because then they get acceptance and they're not fighting the issue. So, but thank you for putting money into it.
That's great. So are there other questions? Jeff?
I was
You didn't
wondering
get
on
your questions answered during the session, huh?
there's money in there. I saw grant money for small businesses that were affected by the pandemic, and how will we get the word out to people in our community about that grant opportunity so that we can get get that out? What's the communications plan?
Kian, do you want to respond to that? I mean, we definitely have a plan to ensure that those dollars are being distributed throughout our District 24. So as the money, once it's approved, I think my hope is that our office will ensure that you will be able to receive information from our office to see how people can access the resources. So we haven't figured it out yet, but we're working on it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
Representative, I want to add very quickly is that I think like first of all for the $1 million grant that go through MRG Foundation, I think this would be a donor advised fund. So we will work a lot like together on like how that fund gonna look like, how the process gonna look like, who's gonna be like on that, and that's when it hasn't happened yet. So
Okay.
we're still in the process for that. And for the Business Recovery Center, we actually have a meeting with the person on Thursday to figure that out. So we just started that planning process.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm in the same situation on some other legislation and funding, and people want to know, well, hey, you just finished the session 5 weeks ago. Why don't you have all this figured out? So, good.
Sure. Anyone else have a question, Sean?
I think Connie has a question.
I'm trying to unmute. Okay. Hi. I have a question about it's a project that I first thought of 10 years ago. And that is, if you can all visualize the former Kmart building at Northeast Sandy and 122nd. Everybody familiar with that property? And so my idea was to create a large scale public market there, Oregon Public Market, that would feature, the bounty of the state. And there was in 2012, the Multnomah County Food Summit. I presented on that, and on our panel was a representative from Travel Portland, who spoke about how this would be great for them to promote to the city, and the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians. Their representative spoke about millions of pounds of fish and seafood products that the Northwest tribes harvest every year. That's all sold to wholesalers. And there's no one out there, in the public that understands that this particular fish or that seafood product was native caught. And today's, native fishermen, working the Columbia River and out throughout the Pacific Northwest are descendants of people that have fished these waters for thousands of years. And so my idea was to use the existing building that no one seems to be able to find an actual use for, and transform it and build a deck up on top so people can take their food and go up there and have something to eat and enjoy these wonderful views, and to have rooftop gardens up there. And the anchor tenant would be in the north end of the building are the roll-up doors, and behind those doors used to be the auto repair part of Kmart, which went away a couple of decades ago. And behind those doors would be a tribal-owned fish market. And I'm talking about a major fish market on the scale of Pike's Market in Seattle, Pike Place. And we build out over the parking lot in front of the fish market, a roof, and there would be food and beverage vendors under there that would be serving this market of people that would want to come and buy fish. And in particular, one of the markets we'd be looking for would be asking the question, where do metro area chefs and restaurateurs, where do they buy the fish they're going to serve their customers today? Where do they do that? And how do we know that the fish is correctly labeled? And this market could solve those questions and provide a place for the restaurant community to gather in the mornings. And also inside the building, there would be a space that could accommodate, say, 2 K-12 classes at a time, maybe. And those kids would be coming in on field trips, and they'd get to meet native fishers and fisherwomen, real Indians, and have some food. There'd be presentation, We would do this in partnership probably with the Park Road School District, which is right across the street. And there's other benefits to this. So this project has been on hold all these years, and particularly during COVID, but an architectural firm that I spoke about it to several years ago contacted me last week and wanted to know if this is green lit yet. And because of COVID issues, I wasn't thinking about it at all, but now I am. And this meeting happens to be happening tonight. And so this seems to be a wonderful opportunity to begin talking about it. I plan to talk with the affiliated tribes this week and the Oregon Native American Chamber and see what other support I can get. But that opportunity is just sitting over there, and it would create hundreds of jobs in East Portland. And anyhow, I'd be happy to answer any questions but my question would be, is there any funds in these discretionary funds that we're hearing about tonight that might be still available to support a study, a feasibility study? That would be my question.
Thank you, Sean. This is Casey. I think that's really a terrific idea. I really appreciate you going through the details of describing this project, and it looks like a very well-designed visionary project. So I'm excited about it. So my suggestion to you is that I do not know yet in terms of what type of project that we're going to be funding for the $1 million that we put it, MRG Foundation. But we definitely would like to stay in touch with you, and I actually love to hear more about this project because that's kind of things that I got excited usually, because if the way you describe this is the project that's been envisioned, sounds like this project might have a huge impact in our community. So I would love to sit down and learn more about this project in the future.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up here in this forum, Sean. And another place where I can imagine funding coming from is the EPRC. Does that sound, Gail, you're here, and is that because I could hear elements of development of BIPOC market, and it sounded like something that could possibly go into, they could possibly get a grant to even, go through some of the first phases of design, et cetera, from them.
Yeah, I absolutely think it should be pursued with the potential for what might be made from the idea and through funding sources like the Portland Clean Energy Fund, especially as retrofitting of that building would have to happen and all kinds of things. So yeah, I would say we should also talk about that source of funding.
Right.
Fantastic.
I wanted to ask a question. Is there anybody else were there more questions from anyone else or comments?
I think Connie has
Connie, go ahead, Connie.
Thank you. I believe Senator Jama is coming to our East Portland Chamber to talk. And so I can appreciate that you'll be able to tell people after you get your plans put together of where they can get the funding. To me, I'm happy that the money's going to be available by October. And so I appreciate your efforts to figure out how this is all going to work out. I do know that there's, the Midway newsletter that comes out, to the neighborhoods, all these different neighborhood associations could have newsletters that you can get the information out. But I really am just heartbroken that the renters have not been able to apply for the renters relief. And I want to see the businesses getting their money quicker to get their recovery going. So I look forward to hearing how you're planning to get the word out there. And I do have access to some reporters, so if you want to contact me later separately, you can.
Right.
Thank you, Connie. I really appreciate that. And definitely, both Kian and myself will reach out to you and love to sit down and get your support to getting the word out. And I do agree with you also as well that we need to make sure that the renters, particularly those who are in our community here who are struggling, I think we need to continue to encourage people to access rental assistance programs that is available. We are really trying to figure out how to spread the word and ensure people know it, what's available to them. That's a different conversation than what we're having right now, but I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that we make sure that we protect people to be not being evicted from their homes and their businesses.
Well, that's just it. That's why we really have to get the word out on this. So thank you for whatever discussions you can have with people, to neighborhood associations and everything, to just get the word out.
Katie, we're running a little bit over and I have something else I need to dash off to, but
Yeah,
so
that's
we'll-
okay. Yeah,
so
I
glad
think
you asked
I
us.
was giving you guys until 6:10, and I'm usually not too much of a whip person to I this is an interesting discussion. So do you need to leave, Jeff?
I need to go. I don't want to interrupt the other good discussions that's going on. And I'll trust the good senator to represent us well here.
Oh,
But
I'm
thank
sure
you
you
all
will.
for being this
Yeah.
evening.
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to thank you, Senator Jama, for bringing up that whole idea of disaggregation, because I think that East Portland may have suffered from that for years. And so I hope that you pursue that. I was talking to somebody else out in a farther east county, and they kind of drew my attention to the fact that because Portland often gets treated as a unit, and so the poverty of East Portland gets lost when the city of Portland gets used as a unit. And see if you could figure out a way to get the state in the way that they distribute things to divide up Portland in some ways, so that it was. I mean, we've talked. That has been quite a conversation. Actually, it's came up several times in this discussion about aggregation and disaggregation, and I think it's super important for East Portland. So it seems like kind of a wonky issue, but I really appreciate the fact that you brought that up. And there was another thing that I wanted to say. I've been kind of pushing this idea of an anti-racism equity plan for East Portland. And when you guys sat down and had to start picking out projects to fund, you didn't have much time, and you basically had to go with existing in good organizations. It looks like you gave your money out in a really wonderful way, but you kind of had to have existing projects. And I keep trying to get across to people that if East Portland had a plan, it would be made up of projects that could be used, to make the case that this project needs to be funded. It would all be ready. A plan provides you with the kind of work that you guys had to do on your own in just a few days. So you can ask me a question about that if I'm not getting my idea through here. I'm not sure if I am. But basically, a plan gives you, things don't get made often unless you do have a plan. And there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about. I'm sure it'll come up again. Connie, I think you had something that you wanted to ask about.
Well, I just wanted to say that the East Portland Chamber has been promoting the fact that money should be distributed by census district, not by county, because Multnomah County looks too rich, when in fact the East Portland area needs to get their funding based by census district. And then we would be getting the same amount of money that they would be getting in Southern Oregon. And there has been discussion about that in the legislature. And Jeff Reardon has been a supporter of that concept. And so if we can get you on board to help with that new way of distributing money, not by county, but by the census areas, that could make a difference.
I think those are really interesting ideas, and definitely would love to have a more conversation about them. And so definitely, Connie, love to continue that discussion with you and the rest of the team here. I do believe that you're absolutely right. I think East Portland really needs to have a plan, as Katie was saying as well, because honestly, if I had, when I get appointed, if there was a ready project, and I think we had this conversation beginning of when I was appointed, if there was actually another 5 projects that are ready to go, we could have definitely have advocated for those projects. And I think all 3 of us finally said, let's come together, let's work together, figure out how do we represent East Portland better than in the past. And I can tell you right now, you're absolutely right. We've been lump sum into the Portland overall, and East Portland doesn't get the fair share of the resources we need and the buffer that's in our district in terms of it just doesn't, we don't just get fair share. I do believe that, absolutely. And so we have to do better coordination and working together. And one of the really exciting things about EPAP that for me is that I know that's what EPAP is supposed to do, and that's what you have been doing all along, and which you just need to support that you need it from our legislators like me and Representative Reardon and Valderrama to ensure that there's a true partnership with you working to ensure that your voices are amplified in the building.
I so appreciate that. Oh, I finally remember what I was going to say. When you were talking, I was thinking about the fact, another kind of wonky thing, but it could have a really big impact. And that is the school distribution formula. There's actually I used to be a school board member too, and for Park Rose. And there's actually in the school board, and you may not even know this because, you don't know everything, right? But the school board, when money is given out to the schools, they're trying to do it very fairly, and there's a percentage goes to for each student that's a BIPOC student, and so I don't know when the last time they looked at that formula. That would be an easy way to distribute money to BIPOC kids, is through that school formula, because oftentimes the schools that they are going to are struggling. So anyway, that's just an idea that maybe for another session. Anyway, so I just want to thank you. Any last minute, any last questions before we let Senator Jama and Ken take off? Or you can stay, of course, for the end of the meeting, which is.
Katie, Kian has his hand up.
Oh, go.
Yeah. I just want to make a few comments, which I think like Senator Jama already mentioned it. I think the first one is that if we're looking at how these ARPA money dollar was decided, it's very obvious. It's not through an equity lens, right? Like, everyone was given the same amount. And in the mid of session, we were given like 1 week to decide on everything by the deadline. So I think like from the very beginning, it's a very rushy process, but I think like at the end of the day, we try our best with the other 2 representatives to see what the best we can do at the moment with the current process. We have to focus on our district and then note that and continue trying to raise our concern, and hopefully the leadership can work with us to have a more equitable process in the future. And the second comment I want to make is that about how we have a lot of effort going on separately, trying to advocate for East Portland. I think the data is already there. Like, it's not like something new. I think it just like, it doesn't have that energy. So I think it's very important. And that's our office. We'll definitely reach out and see how we can bring everyone together and coordinate in District 24 and see how we can strategize and put a plan together so that we can strategically advocate for our district through either funding or through policy change and all of that. And the last comment I'm going to make is that I know Connie brought up housing. So I just mentioned very briefly that we work together to pass two very big housing bill, Senate Bill 282 and Senate Bill 278. The first one is to give all the tenants until February of 2022 to pay back all of their like back due rent, and the other bill to give all the tenants the 60 days like protection when they receive some eviction notice from a landlord. So if you know any constituent or any people that struggling when they or like freak out when they see that like eviction notice and don't know what to do, please just email us, which we're gonna put down here, and then we will work with them or connect them with some other resources that can help them through that legal process. So that's all. But thank you so much, everyone, for your work.
Thank you, Kian. And just also adding to what Kian said, I think honestly, I like just to take this opportunity to thank EPAP for your leadership and your work ongoing for, I believe EPAP had been around for more than a decade, I believe right now. But I think what I would just like to say that you have a seasoned House of Representatives Freedom who has been there for a long time, and you have a very new dynamic House of Representatives Valderrama and myself who are really trying to make sure that we're working together on your behalf. We have a limited staff capacity, as you can imagine. Senate District 24 is right now is me and Kian. So two of us, and we're trying to do all the other things. So I think if we can work together to figure out best way to represent our district, I think really we are looking forward to be working with you all. And I'm very grateful this opportunity to present in front of you. So thanks so much for the invitation.
Well, thank you. No, this was great. This is a very nice mix of being able to hear what was going on and ask questions, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and what a way to get started in your legislative career, huh? Okay, so I think I have about 10 minutes to squish a bunch of stuff in at the end here. So let's see what we need to do. I think I wanted to find out, Gail, did you want to do any kind of an update for us on, you're calling EPRC, I think of it at PSIP, but your EPRC is your organization, right?
Yes, the East Portland Resilience Coalition is an offshoot of EPAP focused on community action and developing community resiliency at the family and neighborhood level. We've been operating and we're underway with our planning grant from PSIF, and we are working on hearing from the community in a number of different ways and on developing collaborative initiatives that we can go forward and potentially request Portland Clean Energy funding for, or other types of funding. It's not the only source, but it's one of those great sources at the moment that can fund East Portland opportunities for our residents and families and neighborhoods. So the one thing I would say is that this next two cycles of funding, the very first cycle of funding passed this spring, but we have two cycles coming up, one in the fall with grants due in November, and then one next spring that are going to provide, each of those will provide $20 million in grants. And so I'm certainly happy to help and work with anyone who wants to know more about that PSEF funding and what the opportunities entail. And on behalf of the Economic Development Committee, this dovetails so well with all the initiatives that we're trying to push forward, since the PSEF funding really centers BIPOC and other communities, low-income and other disadvantaged communities. So there's a great opportunities there. And the Resilience Coalition brings together 27 organizations to try to committed to developing this community. So that's the outline, and I'm happy to provide more information for anyone. And Ken, I'm not sure whether I have, well, you might not be there longer. Oh, no, there you are. Whether, I don't think I've sent you our roster of collaborating organizations. So I'll make sure I do that for the East Portland Resilience Coalition. So that's it. That's the only update. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else that wants to update this committee that maybe I wouldn't even know about? Anybody? Okay. Oh, JR, I put you down because I was thinking that perhaps that, and again, let's keep it really short, but EPAP is going through an examination process, a little bit of an examination. So that's probably not what you're calling it. Maybe just say something about that and tell people if or how they can be involved in it.
Yes, yeah. So
When it's going to start too.
we're doing a quick evaluation. Essentially, there's going to be a few steps. The first step is going to include, we hired a consultant to give an assessment and analyze where EPAP is at, and then create recommendations on where we need to go next. So that's going to include two parts. One is going to be a survey that everyone can fill out. And so once we get that survey developed and the link, we'll be sharing it out. That'll be a great opportunity for everyone, whether you're a participating member or a community partner. Love to have your input on it, just where EPAP is at, give an honest assessment, answer some questions very honestly, give a few minutes to fill that out. It's going to be very helpful to deciding what steps we want to be taking next. As well as there's going to be some focus group sessions. We'll let you guys know about those as they get planned and scheduled. But that's another opportunity. If a survey is not your forte, filling them out on a piece of paper, you want to come in person and share, let us know and we can create that environment as well. That's going to be the next steps. More to come. Thank you.
Okay, great. And I have down here succession planning. I'm not going to stay as the chair of this committee forever. And in fact, I have selected a date when I will step down, and it will be in January. I kind of took on this committee assignment because I wanted to kind of was going through a lot of transition. But it's not exactly, I'm already on the Planning and Sustainability Commission. I feel like that's enough. So I want people to be thinking about someone else to take over here. And, you know, it's actually kind of a great, it's kind, you know, I've kind of enjoyed like trying to think, what would people want to hear about? And almost always we've had something going on. There's been a couple times when JR and I were just like, we didn't have, enough time, and we wouldn't have anything but we've had some great encounters. And I think that, that there's but the other thing is that I really want to work on this idea of a plan for East Portland. And I almost feel like I can't be running a committee at the same time as working for that. And so I think I need to find someone else. Also, it'd be great if the person who was on here was not a minister, but rather someone who actually dealt with business. I mean, I can switch hit, but it's a stretch. So anyway, that's what I'm going to say for now. It's kind of an announcement anyway, because I think I've hinted, but I haven't said when I'm going to leave. So it's time for people to think about who would be the next person to chair this committee. And I think that's it. I'll not really enough time. If there's something that somebody's got on their mind that they think we should talk about next on our next meeting in September, this would be a good time to tell me, or you can email me. Okay.
Ian has his hand raised.
Oh, he does? Okay, sorry. I
I'm
wanna
so
see
sorry
this.
for taking so much space. I have one very quick comment is that I think I just cannot emphasize how important it is for us to keep giving out information about rental assistance and what to do when people get eviction notice. I think with the eviction moratorium ending and then, all of the people don't know how to keep paying rent. And, when you become homeless, it's just so hard to get back on the feet. So I think it's something we honestly very struggling with, like us, the two people office, how we can try to get as many words as possible. So I will connect with all of you individually and see how we can coordinate, especially for people in our district to know the resources that they have. But yeah, that's the only thing.
I think JR is the best person to talk to about that, right? Because you've got the lists of people and yeah. Okay, well, thank you all. And hopefully I'll see you next week.